Why am I here? Do I make any difference by being here? I'm sure a lot of us ask ourselves this kind of questions at some point in our lives. And I think as the world has become much more chaotic in the past few years, we might be asking those questions a bit more frequently. But how are those questions related to the subject of the video and Chrono Cross? Well, recently I finally got to play Chrono Cross The Radical Dreamers Edition. Also, what did they do to Serge's face? He looks like a complete fool now, you poor, poor thing. At least his in-game portrait still looks intact, and now more refined too. So replaying Chrono Cross now felt very different to me compared to when I first played it about half of my life ago. This kinda makes me feel old. Compared to when I first played the game as a kid, this time around I paid attention to the game's overall themes much more, and I took my time to read all the dialogues and get most of the interaction I could from the game. Although at the moment of recording this video I only got about halfway through the game, but for the topic of the video it provided me enough information. To my surprise, I've realized that Chrono Cross actually provides some really good food for thought in response to the questions that I asked at the beginning of the video. Also, I guess it's the time. Warning, warning, spoilers incoming. Probably not too many, but you've been warned. And now, with the warnings out of the way, let's dive in a kid's eye, like in Chrono Cross. I believe I first came across the game around 2000 and 2001, because I remember there was even a photo of me and 3 of my childhood friends sitting next to the TV with Chrono Cross on the screen, and the photo even had a timestamp. Man, I feel even more old now. It's like every section of the video ages me more and more. Ugh. Already back then, the story made a big impact on me. A small village boy, Serge, travels to another dimension and becomes the key to saving both dimensions. That's pretty wild. And there was I, a small town boy, spending summers at the village with my grandparents, with basically the same number of people as in Arnie village. Just no teleportation, no beaches around, or portals. Just wild bears and wild snakes. While the story is pure fiction, you could say, there are much wilder stories out there, like you pull the sword of the stone and you become the warrior of light, or you reincarnate and you get fused with a demon. Yes, they are wilder, but those stories are just feel so far off the realms of possibility compared to like traveling to another world that looks like ours but just slightly different. It's kind of like mirrored like the second castle in the Symphony of the Night. Oh, I hope that was not a spoiler to anybody at this point. Back then for me, just as another teenager covered in acne, bullied in school, I wasn't getting good grades either. I wished for so many things to be different in my life, to have my situation magically improved, or to live a different life elsewhere, in another world, where everything would definitely be better. I always thought how much my life sucked and how I must have had one of the worst lives in a history of lives. That was until I started paying attention during the history classes. And as I grew older, I realized how much bigger the problems are when you're older, and you also have to solve them by yourself now. Yet back then, I couldn't stop thinking that life in another world would certainly be so much better. I would be the popular guy, not the outcast there. I would look so great without any skin problems. I would be wealthy and I wouldn't have to save my lunch money to buy video games. And yeah, no wonder I'm as skinny as a skeleton now. And that's why I always preferred parallel world stories over time traveling, for the fact that I can be in the same world yet in a potentially better version of it. It's like your home world gets a makeover or a new software update, but then based on that fact it would not always get better, since an update could bring many bugs with it. I know, some of you may say, why not go back in time and just change the past? Undo the mistakes, just like in Chrono Trigger. Well, that's a possibility, yes. and time traveling in itself might sound much more thrilling, I would personally still want to travel to an alternative world instead of another timeline. Okay, to get it out of the way, Chrono Trigger is a masterpiece, and I wouldn't even try to argue that. It really is one of the best games of all time. And yes, it could be nice to go back in time and change the future, fix all the mistakes you've made, and make better choices with all the information you have on hand in the future, but then in the process, you'll also create so many different alternative futures and timelines. Hello to a certain Tales of game, which shall not be named, not to spoil its story here. Or you might have to fix every single timeline for the rest of your life. Yes, I'm sure that would be a thrill. And Final Fantasy XIII 2 is a great example of creating 500 different timelines and then trying to figure out what went wrong and where, and how to fix it. Plus, I don't necessarily want to be in a dystopian future, prehistoric times where I have to battle dinosaurs for survival and lose. Also, there won't be much fighting in the first place. Oh, how do I know I'll lose to a dinosaur? I mean, aside from the obvious, after not long ago participating in paintball and axe throwing competitions, I have learned that I suck at those. And how lucky I am that I was born in these times when I don't have to fight for survival daily and I can have a fairly peaceful life. However, let's return to parallel worlds and leave time traveling for another video. It is clear that many people were fascinated by the idea of another world, with the mentions of other worlds found across many different cultures. I mean, how wonderful would it be if you could just leave all the bad things in your home world, like in Chrono Cross, the one you were born in, and then go to another world to just live your best life? Isn't it wonderful? Suteki dane. Okay, I shall not sing. However, Serge's story shows us that it might not be the case, and then the grasslands are not always greener in another world. I mean, even if such a thing was possible and you could start your life over, but the question is, would you do much differently in another world? Would you actually be able to avoid all the mistakes you've made in your home world? Or has the other you made those mistakes already or made much worse life choices? Or how long will it be until you actually turn that other world into a copy of your home world and carry all over all the things you didn't like? Imagine a world where nobody knows you. It might sound great to some of you, but how great is that really? You would have to start over with everything, and you'll be the same age as you are now. So there's no foundation you've already built for yourself in your homeworld. Plus, since you aren't a child, you have no time to make as many mistakes either. And for example, how many friends did you have in your homeworld? 10, 7, 5, 3, 1. And even if another world versions of your friends exist, they might look like them, but they will not necessarily be the same people. Also, no money in your bank account unless you on the other side is a billionaire. But hey, what are the chances of that? I mean, good luck if you want to kill some monsters for some pocket cash, but what if it's like our current world where there are no monsters to kill? Just half of my life ago, I would have been so ready to throw it all away just for a chance to see what it could be like, but now, I don't think I would take as much risk. I guess that's why they make most of the protagonists in Japanese RPGs so young, since when you're younger, you're much more willing to take risks. The thrill of adventure spirit is high. At this point in life, I would think more logically. I mean, what if the other world is much worse? And what if, unlike Surge, there is no way to travel back to your home world and you'll be just stuck there forever? Yeah, no thanks. That actually just makes me want to take a step back and look at my own life. Are things really that bad? Maybe they aren't. And if they aren't good, then we can at least try not to turn bad things into horrible things in our own heads. Plus, while we don't often see and realize in our homeworld, we likely already made a mark, while in another world, we'll have to start over from scratch. And we don't take into consideration the role we play by just living the life the way we do without even doing something extraordinary. Yes, I admit there's still some kind of thrill and a possibility to see how the other you is doing. If that other you went left in another world while you went right in your homeworld. And while again, it could change everything, but it could also mean nothing. Just like the other world could be fantasy, or it could be the Final Fantasy you'll see. Final Fantasy 2. Okay, I don't actually dislike 2. And unpopular opinion, I actually like 13. That's why I didn't use it as an example here. Breaking news. Final Fantasy 13 might actually have over 13 fans. We love you, Lightning. All 13 of us. Back to our boy Surge. Based on Surge's example, we can see that traveling to another world isn't all sugar and rainbows, as you can get into more troubles than you might have expected, and without anyone to rely on, unless a superhero kid would come and rescue you from another timeline or dimension, or... Honestly, even after watching a few of those Chrono Cross story explained type of videos, I still feel a bit lost. But I went from clear as swamp to clear as mud. That's already a big progress. And don't get me wrong, Chrono Cross is a fantastic game, but the story in the second half of the game is more convoluted and complex than the entire Final Fantasy XIII trilogy. And in Final Fantasy XIII trilogy defense, I can say that after you read everything, database, side novels, listen to the audio drama, yada yada yada, you will get most of it. But that's a story for another video. For now, Surge returns to Chrono Cross. And no more distractions. I think Chrono Cross is such a great example of how one person's existence in itself, without trying to purposely make a big difference in the world, can still affect people around and change their lives. If you stop for a moment and let that sink in, just thinking of something like that is pretty incredible. In Surge's case, based on the interactions with the people in Arnie's village where Surge is from, aside from accident at Opasa Beach, I can't think of any other big events in the village he was involved in. That is before going to another world and transforming into Warrant. If you play Breath of Fire series, you'll get the reference. And if not, what are you waiting for? And yeah, Surge was just doing his thing in the village and living his life. Yet, despite that, there are concrete examples of him changing lives for the better in his homeworld and other world for worse, by just simply not existing there. And for this specific example, I'm only looking at his life in Arnie village. Based on the interactions, he might have not gone out of the village too often, aside from Opasa Beach. And I can imagine he'd be hanging out in Hydra marshes with all the sin toxins. I mean, all the toxic gases, and it doesn't seem like he traveled much to Termina. Not that homeworld Termina is a fun place to be in either. Surge is a great example of someone whose mostly chill and laid-back existence still changed the lives of people around him. I don't want to look outside of Arnie Village when talking about Surge effect, as I mentioned, considering that nobody seemed to know this village boy outside of his village. So it'd really be hard to tell what effect he had on any other places in El Nido. However, in Arnie Village, we don't have to go too far to find top 3 examples of the Surge effect. For the starter, a mean guy now lives in his house in another world, instead of Surge and his nice mom. I get it, you walk into his house without asking for permission and he gets mad. But nobody else in the village behaves like that when you enter their homes. I mean, everybody's just chill. He could at least be a bit cool about Surge being in his house, considering that a Komodo pup in the next room is charging visitors to sleep in the bed that potentially belongs to this guy. Yet still, the guy behaves like trash while having his pet or partner, whoever they are to each other, charge you for sleep. Does he not know better or whatever? Moving on from that loser, the another world version of the fisherman from across the street, instead of catching the biggest fish and fulfilling his live stream, like in the homeworld, he becomes obsessed with worshipping strange creatures and gets very superstitious to the extent of forgetting his own family. That sounds like another major change in another person's life due to just the lack of Surge boy on the other side of the street. I can imagine Surge going to his house every day and trying to encourage him to go fishing and rooting for him to catch the biggest fish in El Nido. That Surge, who oversleeps when he's supposed to meet up with his potential girlfriend. I can imagine him actually putting effort to encourage the man purposely. Maybe he told him try to catch it, or maybe he told him to get lost. I mean, based on some of the dialogue options you get when you first meet Kid, and she asks to join you, you can tell that Serge is not that innocent. Okay, I was not supposed to sing this part, but it's too late now. And to complete the trilogy of changed lives in Arnie Village, since everyone loves a good trilogy, except that nobody loves Final Fantasy XIII trilogy. Poor Light. The village chief himself is no longer the kind-hearted old man that everybody loves, but instead a stingy guy in another world, whom people can't stand. It's almost like Serge and his mom could have been the decisive vote when it came to electing the new village chief. I bet he promised to make Arnie great again too. The Another World's village chief is so insignificant that he doesn't even deserve a portrait. I mean, even Lisa from Termina got one, and she has no significance to the plot whatsoever. But also, in some defense to the new village chief in Another World, that stingy guy at least won't beat the hell out of you and KO you just to revive you and KO you again. What a... never mind. That kind-hearted old man Radius, he can give you PTSD from some battle tutorial in just a few minutes, right at the very beginning of the game too, and do it to the poor boy Serge, who already has PTSD after the Opasa Beach accident. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near his Radius. And that's already 3 people who complete our happy trilogy. Happy trilogy in Homeworld. Their lives were changed by just the existence of Serge in their area. Or if you take the fact that there are people who are dissatisfied with Another World's chief, then that adds more people to the pile. It's still a trilogy, because it looks better, but those people could be DLC. So what does any of that have to do with the questions asked at the very beginning of the video? We often wonder if we matter, if we make any difference in our lives at all. Why are we here in this world? That everything seems meaningless in the global scope of it. However, just because someone didn't tell you to your face that you made any impact on their lives, doesn't mean that you made none. That person might not know themselves at that very moment either. And you may also say that Serge didn't do much for those people around him prior to traveling to Another World and starting to make some real big changes. At the very beginning, he didn't do any heroic deeds and he couldn't even wake up on time. Okay, waking up on time is overrated, so don't feel bad, Serge. Especially being late to meet Lena after such a badass dream, just to collect some shells. No. And yet, despite that, the changed lives of people in Arnie Village speak for themselves. I think Chrono Cross is also such a great and cozy video game story to revisit when you have those questions or thinking about the related aspects of lives. You don't even need to get too far in the game to see the difference that you make as Serge as the character in that game. And since you can rename Serge after yourself, now you are the one making an impact on that world. Even if at this point you don't know what is the meaning of things that you do and how they matter in your life, that's okay. Just look back at Serge's journey or your journey in Chrono Cross and let yourself relax with Chrono Cross. It's almost like taking a bath, like the whole experience. Plus, I feel like one of the best soundtracks in the history of soundtracks, and the beautiful environment will definitely give you a sense of comfort. Whether you want to believe me or not, it's up to you, but it's pretty much a fact that by watching my video right now, until the very end, you're already making a difference in my life. I know that my efforts of creating it didn't go to waste. Someone in your life might actually tell you one day that you've changed their life for better. However, just because it was not said to your face or didn't happen in front of your eyes, that doesn't mean you didn't make a positive difference from where you are in someone's life right now. A simple conversation with someone could be life-changing for someone at that moment. Yes, it may sound big or like a story from some fantasy video game or a movie, but there's truth to it. Because we've all heard those stories on when a successful person says, someone said this to me and it changed everything. It doesn't always work like that, but when it does, it does. In Chrono Cross, Serge is told that he's a piece of a big puzzle, but in truth, we all are. I mean, if Lena didn't exist, Serge might have never gone to Opasa Beach, and he wouldn't teleport from there. Everything is connected. At the end of the day, just let yourself believe that you're also a piece of a puzzle, a grand puzzle that the universe made. If you are here and now, that's because you're supposed to be here. And on that note, thanks very much for sticking around until the very end of this video. Please let me know in the comments below, have you played Chrono Cross, how many times, and did it make any impact on you? If not, what was the game that made an impact on you and changed you and your life? Also, it would be awesome if you could subscribe and like the video. This will motivate me to make more videos in the future. Stay awesome, and I wish you all patience and resilience. Honestly, sometimes I feel like every time I level up, or you could say, get older again, my patience skill doesn't level up with me, but somehow it just goes down. It must be a glitch. I have no other explanation for that. If you have a solution to this glitch, please share the wisdom in the comments down below. Until next time.